All right, cool. So yeah, Noah, everyone who reads it must converse. I got my boy Fathalo at I ain't fitting to read that
All right,
with
yo,
me.
so the PH is silent. It's just like thalo, like they, low. It's
Halo.
I'm not afraid to alienate my viewers, so I make it hard for myself. You know what I mean?
I like your style. You know, you're like, I'm going to do it my way. I'm going to do exactly what I want. I dig it.
Yeah, I tried the other way.
Right.
It doesn't work.
Well, I like your style, man, when it comes down to it. I'm glad you're part of this read along. Um, this read along started off with just you and I. Um, a third guy that had joined dropped out, and now we have another third that's in with other short stories going forward. But we're going to break down uh, on my channel. I'm going to break down Oblivion, David Foster Wallace, the whole thing, going story by story. This is the first installment, so we're going to go for the first story here. This is Mr. Squishy. There we go. This
All
is
right, this
Mr. Squishy, and I think that it's a perfect. You know, David Foster Wallace obviously knows what he's doing. He knew what he was doing, and he gave us a story. The first story was that kind of thing that is tough, right?
yeah, it was like hieroglyphics, you know? It's just really difficult to understand why I was reading like so many random descriptors that seem to like, I don't know, signify everything at once. Like just way too much noise going on. Um, Everything had a purpose. There was a purpose for it all, but like from the jump, there's no figuring that out.
A bit much, that's for sure. That's David Foster Wallace. Uh, we say now typical David Foster Wallace because we know what David Foster Wallace does. People know what David Foster Wallace was about. But when he came out and started doing what he was doing, I'm sure it was overwhelming to everyone. It's this hyper realistic, overly descriptive, almost to a point of being absurd uh, writing. And so with Mr. Squishy, we jump right into that. And we're in a marketing, group where they're tasting a product called Mr. Squishy is the brand, right? And they're
Mhm.
tasting a certain product that is like some new kind of cupcake or something with a filling and a frosting on top, and it's packaged and it's meant to be packaged. It seems like in convenience stores, and uh, I just saw it as like a little Debbie, but it's not a little Debbie. It's you had said in our discussion that it's a home run, and it really is. Do you want to elaborate on that a bit?
Well, I mean, it's hilarious just how much you glossed over in
Oh yeah,
describing
oh
because you
yeah.
are
We're gonna do our best.
it is, it's a snack cake it's called Felonies. But I mean, he
Felonies.
goes
That's right.
into so much detail about how the Felonies logo is going to be the Mrs. Squishy logo, but behind bars, and what the snack cakes are going to be made out of. And I mean, it's a high quality snack cake. I mean, he goes into a lot of detail about how high quality it is. It kind of
Right.
reminded me of I mean, the other book. I've read The Godfather, and in The Godfather, Mario Puzo seems to know more than is required of him for a book. Like he knows about there's like portions where he's very knowledgeable in botany, clearly knowledgeable in human anatomy, but that's um, nothing compared to how much David Foster Wallace knows about everything that he's writing about, and it's to the
Right.
point where like he, I mean, it's clearly the point because of course, he talks about every single thing about these little snack cakes and how they're called felonies, and then the little miniature versions we called misdemeanors, and how that's going to be played up based on how felonies are taken into account, but also every person. I'm sure I'm going off course here, but every person in that he's talking about, he speaks not about them as people, but he talks about he references them only as demographic data points.
Right.
So he can talk about the same person 3 different times, but because he doesn't use their names, he only says, it's like like 6 people in this room are over the age of 40. 4 of them have facial hair, 6 of them are bald. And like from that, you can't tell. There's no way you can tell which one of them both has facial hair and is bald and is under 40. You only know these random little things. And so having to see the perspective of like reading this story in sections that don't correspond to each other, the whole thing just
wild.
what the hell am I reading? Like it was insane. It's crazy.
We're talking about in the chat. Someone is asking what we're talking about. We're talking about the first story in David Foster Wallace Oblivion. It is called Mr. Squishy. So we're just like maybe to page 3 or 4 right now. So you are firmly in a room where a marketing data research gathering is happening, and we have our main character. We learn his name is Schmidt, and then we have every single person that's in this room described in detail, but it's not exactly detail as a normal narrator would describe a person. It's all this marketing data. It's all this, I mean, it's so exhaustive. But then we have the product as well, and as the story progresses, we learn more and more about our main character. This is Schmidt, who turns out to be a pretty sad character, which is uh, that's on brand for David Foster Wallace when he's talking about somebody who is in the corporate machine, and that's just how he does it. But we have a lot of weird things going on when we really learn about the interior life of Schmidt, who is more or less the most human character that we meet. He has a plan. He has a rebellious, militant plan against Mr. Squishy. He's harboring some kind of resentment. That kind of thing is happening. He's got some plan of putting poison, or maybe it's a fantasy to do this and poisoning Mr. Squish or poisoning the felonies. So that kind of thing is going on. We got some guy climbing the walls of the building or in some kind of weird contraption with suction cups, and he's actually climbing the outer walls, the windows of the buildings with suction cups. And that kind of thing is slowly happening throughout our narrative.
Yeah, it's happening back and forth from inside the room to outside, whichever building. It might be the same building, it might be a different building.
Right,
like
might be across the street, who knows?
And then going into Schmidt's private life, or maybe his, and then like his like chemist sub, like was it him that was doing the whole chemistry set, trying to get different poisons? Because somebody
now was he really doing it? I don't know. I don't know if it was actually him. I think that he was the one that did have that plan, and it was to poison the felonies with ricin, right? And so Schmidt is he's this kind of character that is a product of the company, but also an employee of the company. And he was described as having fantasies about, these loser fantasies about some female in the office that he would never speak to. But then also he would just sit there and watch his TV every night. His thing was to watch TV every night where there's hundreds of channels, and he just constantly clicked channels. And it was an illustration of that. He was wanting to see what was on the other channels that he wasn't watching. That's what his desire was, to constantly want to see what was on the other channels. and never was it to watch something. It was this kind of constant information consuming thing. And I wonder what David Foster Wallace would have wrote if it was like modern day with the with you know the way that social media and the internet has blown up.
I mean, he was pretty prescient, considering how the story ended. With, can we just jump to that, to the how do you say, the
Climax.
brain part? Kind of like, you know how they were doing the meeting, but then the meeting had like saboteurs in there, and there was like no, like there was like everything was kind of set up to fail. Like every single, like there's people in
Right.
the meeting who wanted to just to prove that this kind of, what do they call it, focus groups? That focus groups
Yeah, a
are
focus group. Right.
so there's people like destroying that, and then like no matter if it works or not, there's a way to flip it, in terms of selling more product by playing the narrative of the focus group not working. And then at the very end, he jumps to the internet being the new means of understanding the consumer, by their behavior online, instead of having to get a subsection of their demographic,
Right.
which he wrote this in what, 2001 or something, and ding ding ding, that's what it is. Like everyone's doing big data, you know what I mean?
Right.
That's the new, like that's the new car. It's big data.
Right.
I think
So yeah, there's multiple levels that are illustrated here. One, it was page 14 that we called out, and you had said you were like, well, there's on page 14, there's this like paragraph, which is the only place where there's an I, where somebody's talking about I, and I had no idea what you were talking about at first, and I was just like, all right, well, um, what does this mean? What does that mean? And of course, the very end, we get some kind of things about exactly what you're saying there, where there's these two higher level officials that both know Schmidt, that both want to actually undermine the focus group. They want to show the focus group to be obsolete, so that and basically just get their data from the internet, get their data from the people itself. And they don't want to do focus groups. They want to just kind of use the population as the focus group. And this it's this bigger level, a higher level marketing strategy. So there's the I that is, I was one of the men in this room, the only one wearing a wristwatch that never once glanced at it. What looked like glasses were not. I was wired from stem to stern. A small LCD in the bottom of my right scope ran through real time and mission time. So he's on a mission. And there at the end, of that paragraph, I held in place under my, just inside my sweater sleeve, small tabs that I could release by depressing one of the buttons on my wristwatch, which was really not a watch at all. There was this small hermetic prosthesis, and that is what that's all we get from that guy until somebody who is obviously that guy starts to vomit in the middle of the focus group. And it's like why is this happening? Well, it's as a stressor for Schmidt to gather data as to how he's going to handle this kind of thing, and to just show that the data that is collected through the focus group is not worth it, right? You got me?
I do. I just think it's crazy.
It's crazy, that's for sure. So then we got so there's just this. So and what's brought up at the very end is the surge. You know what I mean? Because um they're talking about these two kind of shadowy figures at the end, that we see that are involved in this next level marketing that is, you know, totally undermining the what's going on. They are creating a narrative that is real, something that really happened, but is actually created to build a story that they can then use to market their product, to make it something that is, um, something that is interesting, something that they're going to go, that the public is going to just eat up and want and go for. And we hear about the product surge as an example of that. You remember that product, right?
Yes, I am from the 90s.
Right. You wanna say something about that because I was uh I was like maybe in uh ninth grade, 10th grade when that happened, and I remember people loving Surge. And I also remember a kind of a scare that you could like OD on it.
That's hilarious. Yeah, I mean, shoot, I was in the single digits when that thing popped up. It was a goodie. I mean, it was just, like I was into like X Games and stuff. So anything that was extreme,
Right.
I was all for it, hook, line, and sinker. I wasn't really thinking, for myself at that age. I can't help but just think about how weird and how what's the word, despondent-ish, um, and such a what a downer the perspective is for this, because I mean, it's these people are creating like a story to sell these items and doing all these, all this, what's the word I'm looking for? All this subterfuge within their own company to make it work in a different way. And I understand that is something that you can do to get to meet your ends in a corporation or for a nation or in your own household, whatever. If you're that kind of person, you can do that kind of thing. But if you want to sell snack cakes, you don't
Right.
need to do that.
Right. Yeah, it's totally over the top. It's totally over the top, but that is the real negative thing about this is just the
Like,
lengths that they go to.
yeah, like I don't think that's a fair critique of um any old corporation or any desire for
Right.
just to make money. That's, I suppose, if you go so far into your greed and lust for power that you create these kind of events in your own life, then that's, I don't know, that's its own issue. I don't think it has anything to do specifically with like, whatever else you want to tie into it, like corporations or capitalism or whatever, but also what do I know?
Right. Well, I mean, obviously, David Foster Wallace was making a commentary on this and using, just using a company. And like I said before, David Foster Wallace doesn't hesitate to go into absurdity. He definitely does. And like you had said in the chat here, um, this product was already a home run. There was no need for all this stuff piled up. And then I touched on the guy that's crawling the outside of the building. And what does he do? He ends up getting to a certain level where people can see him, all from the ground and all from the surrounding buildings. He's on a high rise, skyscraper. And he hit something on his suit there and it blows up like a marshmallow man kind of thing. He's stuck to the windows with suction cups and it's a giant Mr. Squishy. It's insanity. And it's like this guerrilla marketing. And there's this ultra insider high level marketing job done on the public where they're saying this is a marketing that is going to work on people who are savvy to marketing and are like, oh, I know what's up. And so that's why they're doing the whole story marketing. But then they're doing this guerrilla marketing where there's just this guy randomly climbing the outside of the building and blowing himself up. and there's a Mr. Squishy stuck to the side of the building. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah, and
ridiculous.
people on the street like just smiling almost in a dumb way, like that kind of thing almost appeals to people like in the lowest common denominator because they can
Right.
look up the hey, I know that. It's like putting like a Mickey Mouse sticker on something like a Coca-Cola logo in your Transformers film, you know?
Right. Exactly
It's
right.
foil, I guess. Is that the right word? Foil?
Right.
So,
It's insane. It was an awesome story, and man, I would have never broke it down the way that I was able to get to without you. I appreciate the talking, and so we've talked through all. I mean, we haven't got through all yet. We're on story number 5 now, which is probably my favorite out of the collection. It's Good Old Neon, and then there's 3 more after. So there's 8 total. This was number 1, Mr. Squishy, and read it. You know, y'all. I enjoyed it. It's about 40 pages of dense prose that I hope we helped you make some sense of if you check it out. And we're gonna go through all of David Foster Wallace Oblivion. I hear that the story Oblivion is completely impenetrable. So I think with our powers combined, we might do something with that. What do you think, brother?
I think so. I mean, I'm kind of excited for it because this was the hardest story to read so far that in the
Right.
book that I'm going through, and it's the one that I enjoyed the most. The
Yeah.
other one, like I don't know, I guess too easy. Funny enough.
Kind of all right. Just all right. And yeah, they were, I think, more on the surface, but David Foster Wallace knew what he was doing, putting the first story being something that's really right there in his wheelhouse, right there what he likes to do. So very cool. I appreciate you being on with me, buddy. We're at 22 minutes, so I'm gonna call it because I don't want these kind of things to go too long. And this will kick off the series exploring Oblivion. David Foster Wallace. Thank you, Salo, for being. And y'all check out his channel. The link is in the description box. So catch you next time. Later, buddy.